And it's a rainy trading afternoon right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Trading day right after the bumper interest rate hike by the Monetary Policy Committee. Here's what's coming up in the next 55 minutes. As Nigeria Central Bank says hawkish, experts and stakeholders react to latest bumper hike. The OECD slightly raises its world economic growth forecast for 2024. And the safe haven hits a record high, boosted by a softer US dollar. And it's great to have you join us. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's get a check on the commodities market. We've seen oil prices steady today after rising in the previous session, but we're seeing most of those gains fading. $74.98 a barrel. That's for Brent. WTI crude, no changes really compared to yesterday's trade. Still maintaining that $71 level, trying to get above and stay above the $70 level after breaking that psychological level in the trades last week. But we'll see if we'll have a bullish or a green close. That's for the complete trading week. That's for oil. But we still see short-term, still a lot of pressure on the oil market. Let's get a check on gold now. We see it hit a record high today, boosted by a softer US dollar and hopes of a more interest rate cuts. And, you know, investors are interested in what the central bankers do, but they're also more interested on forward guidance. What's going to happen with interest rates going forward? So that's why we're still seeing gold there surging, but it's $2,658, a new high compared to yesterday's trade. And we see U.S. gold futures $2,682 per ounce, and the palladium 1,042. That's back above that $1,000 psychological level. It did stay below the 1,000 level for a while. Platinum, $981. Silver, not shining, 0.9%, $31.85 per ounce. All right, we see back here, bad news for travelers. We see domestic fares for air travel in Nigeria surged 25.51%, with the average fare for a single journey on specified routes reaching about 123,700 naira in August this year. This is domestic travel. The statistics, which is contained in the Transport Fare Watch for August, released by the National Bureau of Statistics, shows that Niger State recorded the highest air transport fare at 129,000 naira, followed by Abuja, 129,442 naira, while Zamfara and Cross River recorded the lowest fares at 102,665 naira and 120,000 naira respectively. For bus transport within cities, it's saw a significant reduction in fares, with the average fare dropping by 7.77% from 942 naira in July to 869 naira in August. This decrease was even more pronounced on a year-on-year basis, with fares declining by about 34% from 1,336 naira in August 2023. All right, still about rising prices in industries being impacted. You see the Feed Industry Practitioners Association of Nigeria is bemoaning the rising price of maize and soya, and that's important, the production of animal feed. The outgoing president of Feed Industry Practitioners Association of Nigeria, Mr. Raymond Siadin-Sos, was speaking at the inauguration of the new FEPAN executive, led by Mrs. Ayola Oduton, says it is important for the federal government to work with FEPAN to improve efficiency, reduce costs, and enhance the quality of feed produced in Nigeria. Take a listen.
So the key crop, which is energy crop, maize, and also soya. Why we keep on mentioning these two important crops? They are very strategic and very critical, because the summation of two of them adds up to 75% of requirement for making animal feed. If these two particular raw materials are gotten right, I think every other thing revolves around them. The other 15 to 20% that is left are what is called imported raw materials. And that is another arm where I believe the incoming executive will have to work with the government to bring out enabling policies that will influence the monetary policies, the funds that were available, and the administration of these funds. What I mean by administration of these funds, the interest regime which will be simulative of what is obtained in Western countries, where agricultural banks or funds for agriculture is not available at commercial interest rates.
Currently, Nigeria is not doing so well in the Committee of Nations when it comes to protein malnutrition. That is an important aspect that we like to balance and achieve. Secondly, in many countries around the world, feeding for cattle, feed for swine, feed for fish is a very important part of feed production. We intend to work very, very closely with the government of the day to get more feed to cattle, to increase productivity of beef and of milk.
And we know if feed prices stay up, then livestock prices will eventually also go up. So we need to really address that. But dissenting opinions are still trailing the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee to hike interest rates by 50 basis points to 27.25%. That was in the meeting yesterday. The CEO of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf, believes this decision cannot be justified in the face of the country's realities. He was a guest on Business Morning earlier. Take a listen.
How will the hike in interest rates now reduce the energy cost? How will the hike on interest rates now reduce the challenge or shortage of food supply that has been inflicted by flood? What is the connection? What is the impact? I don't quite agree with that. And the CBN also talked about excess liquidity. Where is the excess liquidity coming from? Is it coming from investors? Is it coming from entrepreneurs? When many businesses are already cash-strapped. He admitted that this liquidity is coming from the public sector. Can't we have a way of fixing it at the level of the public sector? So that you don't cause the private sector, investors, entrepreneurs to be paying the price for a crime that they didn't commit. The entrepreneurs were not responsible for the excess liquidity. Now you tighten monetary policy, you increase the MPR, you increase the CRR, at asymmetric corridor at 500 plus 500 basis points around the MPR, it is the investor that will pay the price for this. And this may not necessarily even achieve this objective. I think we should have allowed the fiscal policy measures at least to begin to get activated, and let's see how far we go with that. Already there are some measures that are being put in place. What we are waiting for is faster implementation of those fiscal policy measures. I think that will give us a lot more relief than further tightening of monetary policy. I don't think we can justify these latest steps that have been taken by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The economy doesn't need this kind of intervention at this time, particularly businesses.
There you have it. Business, running a business getting more expensive now, and the cost of borrowing. If you're trying to rely on debt at this point to run your business, but all of this in a bid to tame inflation. Definitely a sensitive balancing act there. And we'll be discussing this now. And also next month, we're going to be marking Cybersecurity Month. We'll gauge the readiness for Nigeria's capital markets for that. And this new age of everything going on the internet at this point. But let's join us for this conversation. We have Mr. Haruna Jallo Waziri is the Managing Director, CSCS PLC, joining me via Zoom. Great to have you in the show.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good afternoon. So definitely, it's all about this bumper rate hike yesterday by the MPC. We've seen we've heard a lot of reactions to that. By the end of the day, businesses will have to pay more of their, I'm going to get loans at this time. So how are you seeing this latest hike? Was it in line with your expectation?
The voice is not very clear, but if I get you, you're trying to tie out the decision of the MPC yesterday with the market.
Yes.
So certainly, one of our biggest challenges in Nigeria today is inflation, whether we like it or not. And if you curb inflation, then you have started solving the problem in that context. And I think in a possible rate hike, and we've seen the impact of it in the last couple of weeks in terms of the slowdown in terms of inflation. And I think, it's a very painful decision, but in my mind, it's something that needs to be done.
Right, and at this time, how do you see capital market players actually responding to this? Most of the listed companies right now, do you think they're overburdened at this point? When it comes to lending rates in Nigeria and this high interest environment.
So definitely, the normal economy says that when interest rates go high, stock markets go low. But in the context of the Nigerian economy, it's slightly a little bit different. So manufacturers, businesses, and all of those who borrow money to facilitate production, once the cost of borrowing is very high, then they look for alternatives. And in this case, I believe that the capital market provides that alternative at a cheaper rate. And so you're likely to see a gravitation towards, for those companies that really understand cost of capital, they're likely to begin to inch towards the capital market because of the cost of lending. And also, because the SEC itself and the NGX, over the last couple of months have begun to, collaboratively work together to bring down the barriers that allow for companies to easily come to the market. And some of it are really working. You can see from the bank aspect where the recent capitalization has push banks to come to the market to raise money, and all of the technology services and the approvals have been put in place to actually fast track that. And so, in my mind, that should also begin to dovetail into other issuers who are looking for alternatives to raise capital and come to the market. In my mind, we're going to see advisors beginning to come for approvals for new issuances, whether it's rights, whether it is outright IPOs.
And maybe we dovetail into more listings, I guess, for the market. But let's look at another issue. Right now, we know it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and that's coming up next month, I think. But particularly, what would you say is the significance of this, for Nigeria's capital markets? We know we've been talking a lot about, introducing technology, into our capital markets where people can just easily trade on their phones. And we're seeing that gradually grow, at this time. Talk to me about how this can be achieved, with cybersecurity issues in our capital market.
So this is very simple for us. And I think this is a discussion that's happening in all board meetings. And if it's not happening, then it should start happening. Top of the risk for most companies these days is cybersecurity, because the world is becoming interconnected. Everybody is using the internet. We're all connecting to each other, and the challenges are very real. So, you're likely to see sophisticated cyber attacks and insider threats that are already happening, that are not reported. There's significant digitization of the trading platforms that we have, and the banks also. There's the fintech growth that's happening. Automation all over is happening, and that also creates some vulnerability. So we're thinking about real-time transaction, which happens every day. What are the things that really could occur? Breach containment. And again, we're all interconnected. And now because we're all interconnected, that risk still exists. So what do we do, and how do we bring the awareness to the market and to the participants and to the companies who are actually sitting down and doing all of these things? And I think that from the part of the CSCS, it is important that we are proactive in terms of our strategies for cybersecurity. It's important that we ensure that there's trust in the market. It is important that we safeguard against any potential disruptions in our financial systems from any cyber attacks. And it's crucial for us, even in the capital market, to emphasize this need for a robust security. I just mentioned that technology is being built for us across the market to facilitate issuances like we've seen in the banks that have come. There's increasing reliance on technology. Those things require for us to begin to think, how do we safeguard all of the things that we're doing from automation? And the intent is that's why we're having that cybersecurity awareness conference. But let me also say this. We're very, very happy that the Office of National Security Advisor, who, if you notice, the cybersecurity law that has just been passed sits or domesticates itself in the NSA's office. And so we went ahead and sat down with them and agreed that, look, we understand the importance of this. We, as a market infrastructure in Nigeria, the role we play is critical. And so we decided to partner to do the next cybersecurity conference together with the ONSA office.
Right, and talking about cybersecurity talent now, we know the jackpot syndrome has hit most of these industries. We're seeing most of this talent, try to find greener pastures abroad. What's the plan to attract, most of these cybersecurity talents to actually stay in and actually help secure cyberspace?
So when you talk about talent, for me, honestly, it's not a problem. Because talent by itself, so let me put it this way. Since COVID, right, the workforce has changed, the work environment has changed, the way we do work has changed, the reward for work has changed. And so if we have all of this happening, it doesn't matter where anybody sits. It is, do you contribute? Are you available when it's needed? How much do you contribute? Are you competent enough? Do you service when you're needed? So for me, the jackpot syndrome, at least within the tech space, is good and bad, but I think it's more good than bad because in any case, even before we build competencies in Nigeria, we used to hire people from India, from the US, from anywhere to work for us within different time zones. And if you have our own people who speak our language, understand our culture, and acquiring these skills, then we have to hire them, even though paying dollars or whatever it is, to feed us back into what is necessary for us to protect our environment. And I think it's not bad and it's being fixed. For example, our own acting CISO doesn't sit in Lagos. He sits somewhere in Canada, and he's a Nigerian. But it doesn't stop him from doing his work. And so these days, globalization and the internet has brought out opportunities that, anybody can sit anywhere and do work. And like I said, things have changed and we have to adapt very quickly for that.
Right, and I guess that's growth of remote work at this time. But what emerging cyber threats should capital markets in Nigeria be preparing for right now?
Please, you have to repeat that question. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I said, what emerging, cybersecurity threats should Nigerian capital markets be preparing for?
So if I get you correctly, I said, what are the emerging things that happen in Nigeria? So, for example, there are initiatives around standards. We are collaborating with the SEC, with the NGX and all the trading points to ensure that, standards are set and we begin to share threat intelligence either through our SOCs because we outsource our own. We also conduct capacity building programs and host, small webinars to ensure that, that awareness is put in place because we are as weak as our weakest point as we begin to interconnect across all channels. Those other, if you like, intermediaries who connect to us, whether they're vendors or otherwise, they create a risk for us if they are not aware of what we do. So, across markets, things have to be done. We have to have that awareness. The markets have to collaborate. And so, as we begin to do that interconnectivity within the context of the markets, like I mentioned about the trading platforms, the offer platforms, the connectivities that are happening with APIs that we built, it becomes important that everybody's aware and we want quicker services, we want secure services, but then in the back of our minds, as we do those things, we have to be aware of those emerging cyber threats that exist within our systems.
All right, well, we'll be preparing for Cybersecurity Month. That's next month. Thank you so much for coming on, Mr. Haruna Jallow Waziri, Managing Director, CSCS PLC. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, going to head straight to the markets. Let's see how traders are feeling this rainy afternoon right here in Lagos, Nigeria. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Let's head to the markets now. Let's find out how it's the local bourse is doing a day after that jumbo rate hike by the MPC. We have Anita Edet with the details. Great to have you, Anita. So, yes, some expected it, some didn't expect it to be that hawkish, 50 basis points. But we're here now. And definitely, I know the markets actually closed green yesterday. I don't know if that was priced in, from that decision. But how's the market looking this afternoon?
Well, good afternoon, Ladi. Let me just inform you, the market is shining intraday. And
so they don't care about the rate hike.
Yeah, exactly. And at the same time, yesterday on the decision day of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank, the market was it closed in the green. INI had mentioned it earlier, was up by 0.18%, and at the same time, more than 140 billion naira was gained. So far, this gain was largely driven by banks, bank stocks in particular. So I think maybe at the time of that announcement, most of the investors there had gotten information, and maybe like before the market could close, there were some last-minute gains by the market.
Last-minute gains, and it's funny how the banking stocks actually, did really well, even though we know the cash reserve ratio, CRR, that's at 50% at this point. But to another issue now with the markets, flour mills, Nigeria announced its major shareholder, that's Excelsior Shipping Company, is going to buy up most of those minority shares there. But I guess bad news, that we're seeing a delisting, because now we've seen the NGX, try to make moves to actually get more listings, at this time. But I guess for the minority shareholders, they might not be unhappy with the price.
Well, Ladi, I think I would also share your opinion that it's bad news, but at the same time, you also take a look at it that there has to be some companies have to go, because it's actually a voluntary delisting, at some point. And what impact would that have on the consumer goods counter? I think it's yet to be seen. Yes, we know that flour mills is an individual company, but at the same time, we also know that that's one of the biggest contributors to the consumer goods counter. Well, it's gladdening for some of the investors there, but we'll take a look at how that would turn out for the
and hopefully as the listings come, we have more listings.
You also have more listings, and of course it's almost to the end of the third quarter. We're almost looking into the final quarter of 2024. So we just expect let's keep our fingers crossed. But we know that so many companies have exited Nigeria. So, but let's see how it turns out. Okay, so let's talk about the intraday market activities for major markets across the African continent. We have 4 of them, starting off first with Nigeria's stock market. We mentioned there 0.17% at intraday, and of course climbing higher within the 98,000 level, 98,740.11 for that market at intraday, and this number is still going up and down, where we see across all the sectors, the banks, the consumer goods, the industrial goods, the insurance, as well as the oil and gas, where all of them we see investors making some moves with their money, especially when you take a look at the monetary policy impact, that announcement by the central bank's MPC just overnight. And then let's talk about the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, 1.20%, 85,000. Yes, this market has been able to come up all the way from the 81,000, 82,000, at some point 83,000, and went back. But currently at intraday, it's almost climbing into the 86,000 level for that South African stock market. And now let's talk about the Egyptian stock market as well as the Kenyan stock market. Up in the green, all the markets, major markets that we track on the African continent are both at the intraday and then for the close of Tuesday for Nairobi Stock Exchange, all share index 0.28% at 106.65 for the close of Tuesday, while EGX 30 for the intraday 0.76%, 31,105.77. So that's it for major markets on the African continent. And now let's talk about the morning after the interest rate hike, what we call the monetary policy rate by the central bank, of course, which came in as a major surprise, all those who were watching, economists and traders, all investors, they were all expecting that there's going to be a hold, but instead the central bank shocked the world. But now let's get a deeper perspective of that. And we have Taiwo Olajubo, chief dealer with FSDH Merchant Bank, to give us details about this and how this has affected the yield environment as well as investor sentiment. Thank you for joining us, Taiwo.
Good afternoon, Annette. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Okay. So
Good afternoon.
So this is the fifth straight interest rate hike by the central bank's MPC. Now, did you see this coming, and what is the reaction of investors as we speak?
Okay, thank you for that. As you had rightly said, the consensus expectation was that there was going to be a hold, right, given that inflation was starting to slow down. However, what we saw yesterday was a 50 basis point hike in MPR to 27.25%, as well as CRR increase for both commercial banks and merchant banks. For commercial banks by 500 basis points, and for merchant bank by 200 basis points to 16%. So that clearly reinforces the CBN's tightening stance to fight inflation. And as they had rightly mentioned, although headline inflation had dropped, from 34.19% to 32.15%, however, core inflation there was still an increase in core inflation. So there was a need for the Monetary Policy Committee members to be hawkish in their decision, which was what necessitated the hike. And as well, we've seen that the currency has also, depreciated month on month, and also the increase in PMS. And all of this would trigger inflation, would trigger further increase in inflation. So it's safe to say we're not out of the woods yet, which was why there was that decision to, hike.
Okay. All right. So away from the central bank's MPC rate decision, let's do a recap of the FGN bond auction carried out on Monday. Now tell us details about this results, which was released just yesterday.
So there was a bond auction conducted on Monday, right? And it was about 190 billion on offer. However, total subscription was about 415 billion. And then we saw that the total sale was 235 billion. And the securities that were on offer were the 29s, 31s, and the 33s. And what we had seen was a significant drop in the stop rates from about 150 basis points on the longest tenor on the calendar, which was the 2033s. We saw a print at 20.05, coming from 21.50% at the previous auction. We also saw a sharp decline, over 100 basis points actually, in the 29s and the 31s as well. But given the decision of yesterday, the MPC decision of yesterday, we've seen bearish sentiment. So these securities are largely trading higher than where it stopped at the auction. For instance, the 33s is trading up about 50 to 60 basis points higher than where it closed at the auction. It was closed at 20.05, but it's currently trading at 25.5, 26, 20.6 levels. So we've seen market has been bearish largely following yesterday's hike in monetary policy rate.
Okay, Taiwo, so let me ask you the final question, which has to do with, it's also the month of September is almost coming to an end. So currently as we speak, I know that there's a Treasury bills auction going on at the moment. And for yesterday, we saw bullish sentiments for the Treasury bills market and the bond market. But now, can you give us details about this Treasury bills auction, the final one for the month of September?
Okay, so there's an auction. The auction has held today, and it's about 227 billion on offer. We expect it to close, particularly on the 1 year, to close significantly higher than where it closed the last auction. 2 weeks ago, there was an auction, and we had seen that the 1 year closed at 18.59%, and the 91-day and 182 days closed at 16.63% and 17%. But as earlier said, the expectation of markets is currently bearish, right? So, and that is largely from the hike, and also the CBN governor reinforcing that tightening is here to stay, right? We need to combat inflation. There's a need to combat the, consistent depreciation in the exchange rate. So we expect, because of that, market participants are also aware that market is bearish and are putting higher bids. So expect that the auction closes about 150 to 200 basis points higher than where it last closed. So expectation is 19.9 to 20% for the 1 year for today's NGB auction. But amount on offer is 227 billion. I expect them to roll over the amount maturing at the minimum.
Okay, Taiwo, I think we'll leave it there. Of course, keep our eyes out for how that your expectation comes out for the close of midweek trading session. Thank you so much for your view on our show. So that was Taiwo Olajubu, chief dealer with FSDH Merchant Bank, giving us details of the fixed income market. So, Ladi, that's it for the market fixed income, and I think we just did a little bit of recap of the market numbers for the stock.
And we'll see if the local bourse actually ends the week in the green with this sentiment. Thank you so much, Nate, for the details there. All right, now let's, it's about UNGA, the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and we have our correspondents there. But Juliana joins us now to bring us up to speed. Hello, Juliana. Hello, Juliana. How's it going? How's it going in New York? How's it going? Hello, Juliana, if you can hear me, I know definitely a lot has happened so far this General Assembly, but bring us up to speed on what's the latest today.
It's been an interesting couple of days, as it always is during this time in New York, of course, because the annual pilgrimage is in full swing. And yesterday was the second day of the high-level debate at the United Nations General Assembly. We had President Joe Biden speaking. It was kind of his farewell speech because, of course, he's not going to be president come the new year. And I think majorly the discussions were centered on the biggest geopolitical issues of the day, which is the two raging wars that we currently have, one, of course, in Europe and the other in the Middle East. So he took all of the headlines. And then, of course, we had the Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky also causing an absolute shutdown of Manhattan. So you couldn't get anywhere yesterday because, of course, he travels with so much security. But that's, of course, what the world is interested in, which is sadly why some of the other issues that affect us and our president, who, of course, has been ably represented by the vice president, Senator Kashim Shettima, it doesn't really make the news. However, I do think the vice president did give a pretty decent speech. As anybody who's listened to him knows, he is a very good orator. And I was pretty pleased with the fact that, he did mention the hypocrisy about African leaders on the global stage not being comfortable or able enough to talk about the situation in Gaza. And then he kind of brought it back to the foundations of the United Nations and the fact that, poverty and climate change is really impacting our region. Of course, we know that he was once the governor of Borno State, and with the significant flooding or the after effect of the flooding in terms of the loss of livelihoods, the loss of property, the loss of dignity, and whether you're a conspiracy theorist or not, or you want to lay blame on the administration, clearly the changing climate is having dramatic impacts and effects on Nigeria and the vast majority of the continent. So I think that was a really important point that he put forward. And in the discussions that I've had with various members of the delegation, including, which I was expecting to hear, my interview with Farmer Umaru yesterday, I know we played some of that snippet on the news at 10 last night. It will be on my business show, Channels Business Global, on Friday. But again, the Niger governor, he spoke about the impact of climate change and the fact that is fueling insecurity. Of course, if you don't have enough food, you're going to do whatever you can to eat. And these are really important subjects. And again, because of the situation back home, the body language, the mood music, I understand that a lot of people just don't want to hear it, right? A lot of these discussions that take place in pristine conditions doesn't trickle down back home. But from what I have observed over the past couple of days, I do think, the Nigerian administration understand the important areas of interest for us. It's just a shame that on big stages like this, it's just not important to the world. But there's still so much more going on. Again, the Vice President is leading the delegation. I know that he has several meetings scheduled for much later today. It's still very early in New York, of course. It's just 8:40 in the morning. I believe he is going to meet the World Trade Organization Secretary General, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, later today. I also believe he's going to have time with the UN Deputy Secretary General, Dr. Amina Mohammed. This is really good for us, so having key players, including Akin Adesina, the African Development Bank president, having them in these major roles across the world is good for Nigeria. So even if we are on the UN platform and our message is not cutting through, in those kind of private discussions, we are able to get our message across. And, there is no better way to serve it than by heads of these organizations. So it has been very interesting. I would say not a jamboree, but then again, it's very different to then what we received, or the body language from FOCAC in China, right? Where it's straight to the deal, lots of pledges, $100 million projects in the pipeline. You just don't get that here. But you are able to talk about those rural communities, the vast majority of people who make up Nigeria, who are probably not listening to us now, can't vent on social media, but do need their leaders to get their issues across. And I think the Vice President did that excellently yesterday. So let's hope, the change makers will listen, and we will start getting some of that climate aid, which has been backdated to that Paris 2015 agreement.
Right, very true. And, we see the AFDB president saying, Africa cannot develop, in the dark. And we're still going to try and get the Niger State governor's comments once we solve some technical issues. But looking at it, so far, do you think we're going to get some maybe investment announcements, possibility for Nigeria's energy sector, with conversations ongoing there?
Well, perhaps I've been trying and failing to get 5 minutes with the Vice President. Of course, he's very busy, and I think there's some protocol. He wants to make sure that he's spoken to enough significant people to actually say something meaningful to the press, but I hope so. On Monday, after a very brief ministerial briefing, he was with the United States Chamber of Commerce. I believe there was a $300 million pledge from that meeting. I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs is overseeing that. But again, it's not the same as when you're going to the Middle East, when you're going to the Far East. So lots of the trips that we've seen recently, again, you can have those multi-million-dollar pledges. The West don't really work like that. There is always, a counter-narrative. There are always their interests at the center of it. And let's not forget, in the next couple of weeks, America are going to a poll, and this is a critical juncture that they're at. I'm yet to hear anything of substance coming out from the Harris camp or the Trump camp on, their plans for Africa. And I think that's an issue. Again, if you do a Google search on UNGA, you're not going to see anything about Nigeria. We don't have that geopolitical importance or clout. I've got to say as well, slightly disappointed that we've got the world's richest man, Elon Musk, in New York at the moment. he spent time with a lot of African leaders, including Kenyan President William Ruto, about Starlink and accessing the internet from space. I believe he was with the Zambian president too. He hasn't been with Nigeria. Those kind of diplomatic dances are really important for us if our message is going to cut through. We're just not going to get the same announcements that we have on previous trips. But again, very important, those who are not listening to this discussion, Laddie, those who don't have access to electricity and energy, those are the people that the president, the vice president, the governors and the ministers are speaking on behalf of at the UN. So yes, it may have, overserved its course. Yes, it may be very veneer, but there's a lot of money in town. On Monday, I was at the Rockefeller Center, and they have a 300 mission initiative, which is to make sure 300 million Africans have access to electricity by 2030. And Rockefeller put $50 million towards that. That's absolutely fundamental. And that may not impact people watching us now, but that is going to impact rural communities. So I think a lot of work is being done. It's just a shame that it just doesn't trickle down back home. So a lot of people are not interested in these discussions. They want to see change yesterday. However, From what I have observed, things are going on, but we're not going to get those typical multi-million-dollar pledges that we're used to seeing every time the delegation are abroad.
Right, and I guess for most of these African countries, if you're not getting those announcements, then you need to plan to save yourself at this point. But thank you so much, Juliana, for giving us the update right there from New York. Thank you.
Let's
look at some other stories. Now we see South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has assured investors at the New York Stock Exchange that the government of national unity has reignited confidence in the country's economy. While attending the United Nations General Assembly, Ramaphosa took the opportunity to address investors, emphasizing the South Africans on the path to economic recovery and inviting them to join the country's growth journey. All right, let's shift gears now. Let's talk about scalable technology solutions. Now that we're seeing the growth of payment solutions within apps, like social media apps, like Telegram, where you can actually have a wallet, a cryptocurrency wallet, and actually make payments and do all of that financial services stuff right there in a chat app. Quite interesting. Let's talk to Bolaji Akonde now, as a software engineer joining us via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of interesting trends there with most of these social media apps, with the likes of Telegram, where you're having game apps that you can actually make money from, and you can actually put money into the Telegram app, and I'm sure there are other solutions out there. So talk to me about the safety of actually putting your money in most of these apps.
Yeah, I would say on the surface, it's safe to put your money on these apps. But as like a user of this type of app, you need to make sure to take on some steps to ensure that you're not vulnerable to malicious attacks from some attackers, right? Because I think most with financial apps as well, you need to ensure that you're taking all these steps as a user to make sure this you're not getting financial attacks.
Right, definitely. If you're putting your money there, you have to, definitely stay safe. Well, can you give us an overview of the current state of the tech industry in Nigeria right now with most of these trends we're seeing?
Yeah, I would say Nigeria's tech industry has proven itself to be one of the best in Africa, and it's also the fastest growing industry in Nigeria. We've seen the rise of companies like Paystack, Flutterwave in the fintech space, making waves internationally. I still believe there's a massive opportunity for any tech solution you're building in Nigeria. We are talking about any sector at all. It could be finance, agriculture, education. logistics, fashion, anything at all, I think there's still a massive opportunity for you to redefine that particular sector with technology. And also considering we have a population of over 200 million people, and majority of these people are young and tech savvy and creative, right? So I think there's like a lot of problems to solve, and there's a lot of people solving these problems already. So yeah, I would say I'm bullish on it. Like there's a lot being built, and with the right policies and in place, I know we'll get to solve like these everyday problems with technology and make lives easier.
Right, and definitely want to make life easier for everyone. But when we talk about scalable tech solutions, how are they shaping Nigeria's tech space right now, and the importance to Nigeria?
Yeah, I will start by trying to explain what scalability means in tech. Right. If you're talking about scalability of tech products, scalability is like trying to grow a tech product to make sure it does not break under pressure of increasing demand. And for a country like Nigeria with a very huge population, yeah, there's like a possibility that if your tech solution is useful, it could break easily with the spike in demand. So imagine you're creating an e-commerce app or an health tech app, and your initial users are 100 customers, and you didn't plan to scale. With its surge in demand, there's a possibility that your tech solution could fail. So I think the problem is not as much as it used to be in the past, right? Because we have like a lot of cloud platforms that enable you to think about scaling without having to spend so much money on initially, right? They let you pay as you go, and that has made things a lot easier for tech entrepreneurs, and so you don't have to spend so much money trying to set up infrastructures and servers and all of that, right? You can just pay as you go, and that makes the cost a lot easier.
All right.
Also for
go on.
Yeah, I was going to say for a market like Nigeria, if you are thinking about like scalability, you also need to think about like reaching like underserved communities, right? And that means you don't have to only think about numbers of users. You also have to think about like making sure your tech solution is handling like lower internet speeds in rural areas, and making sure like some functionalities of your app can work offline.
All right, I guess so much to unpack there. If you're gonna have that solution, it has to be scalable so it doesn't break under pressure. Thank you so much for coming on, Bolaji Akonde, Senior Software Engineer. Thank you. All right, now let's get a check on what's happening in most of these other markets that we track. I would see it's green on the screen mostly, but there's pockets of red with the likes of Ethereum. That's the king of the altcoins, down about 0.64%. BNB is also down. Tron in the red, Cardano in the green. Ton, that's Telegram app there that we spoke about earlier, that's in the green there at $5. Let's get the sentiment in the market. How's the sentiment now? It's turned greedy. So we see the investors getting really bullish right there in the crypto market at 59 points. They touch fear at some point. Let's look at some headlines in the crypto market now. We see Hamster Kombat is gaining attention right there. The Hamster Kombat airdrop has ignited about $14 billion. Binance launch pool surge. That's ahead of the September 26th listing. So we're seeing Hamster getting a lot of attention right now. Some have called it the greatest play to earn game there. Then we see Ellison, one of the FTX ex CEOs there, executives, getting a jail term for what happened with FTX. We heard the story there, a lot of embezzlement and issues with user funds. Definitely, and some users are still trying to get their funds at this time. Now we see Turkey scrapping crypto profit tax plan that they had for most of the cryptocurrency investors right there in Turkey. But let's bring in my guest now, Adebayo. Adebayo is the co-founder, ICP Hub Sahara. Great to have you on the show.
Great to be here once again, Larry. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm sure the FTX sentencing there of the executive, one of the executives, the ex-executive of FTX, I know that's making rounds now in the crypto industry. Some users have not gotten their funds back, from this exchange. But here she's got about 2 years. How are you seeing that?
Yeah, well, I mean, consider the fact that Sam was sentenced to, I think, over 20 years imprisonment, but to actually have the conviction of all the evidences, they need somebody who is internal, who can actually shed more light, which is where Caroline came in. And in exchange for all the evidence she was able to put forward about the embezzlement, money laundering allegations and all, well, she got 2 years imprisonment. Well, in terms of justification, I guess I will leave that to the people who suffered the most due to all these. You know, a lot of people were ruined. I knew a lot of people working from Nigeria who were affected by the actions of these executives because running FTX Africa, a lot of users from Nigeria and all, majority of them suffered a huge loss due to all of this. So 2 years imprisonment to me might be a little bit, underrated. In terms of judgment, it should actually be more than that. I mean, these people should be held accountable for all that they have done.
But I hear she's going to have to return about $11 billion.
Well, we've heard that, but then what are actually the ways that this can truly be achieved? I mean, we had a lot of all these things being said, but then what has actually been done? Eventually, it's going to be swept under the rug, and people over time probably even forget about it.
All right. Looking at some of these users, do you think they're going to get their funds back? I know there's some team working to get most of these users to get the funds, but do you think it's really going to happen, or maybe many years from now?
Well, truthfully, I think partially something like this might, it's actually stand a chance of happening if we are talking about a certain percentage. But in terms of 100% reimbursement of the losses, I mean, this is actually impossible to be done. There was a time they made an attempt to actually, pump the price of the token itself, which was quite working. And because the plan was actually to liquidate more of the token to be able to pay back most of the users or most of the holders of the token, but eventually the price still dwindles down. So, they don't really have any strategy in place. Money that was spent has been spent. Money that was used in bribing the government has gone already. So what exactly are the plans to get most of these funds back? And they don't really have anything tangible in place. Probably over time, a revenue generated by the FTX US over time can now be allocated to paying back most of all these users in a couple of years from now. Well, that is left to them to decide. But right now, I can't really see a tangible, a functional pathway towards realizing this.
All right, let's hope most of these users get their funds back sometime. Thank you so much. It was great having you, Adebayo Adebayo, co-founder ICP Hub Sahara. Thank you.
Great to be here once again. Thank you.
And that's the show today. Thank you so much for watching the trading day right here in Lagos, Nigeria. After that bumper interest rate hike, we'll see if it plays out into the trading week, just a couple of days more, and into next week. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. You can watch this again on our YouTube channel. Bye for now.